There are things a seasoned explorer learns to trust more than maps. The weight of silence, the behavior of animals, the way wind moves through rock. And then there are things that break every rule you've survived by. Things that don't just threaten your body, but hijack your mind. They found the recorder inside a battered pelican case, wedged beneath a collapsed shelf of shale, like someone had hidden it in a hurry. No name tag, no GPS, just one file, 37 minutes long. The date stamp was wrong by 3 years, as if time itself had been dragged backward. At first, it sounded ordinary. Boot crunch on gravel, breath through a scarf, a man narrating in short, controlled sentences, the way professionals talk when they're trying not to sound afraid. He described a narrow ravine where the sun never reached the floor, a place that smelled like wet metal, a place where the compass needle trembled like it was alive. Then the audio changed. A second set of footsteps appeared, too steady, too close, matching his pace without ever passing him. The explorer stopped. You could hear fabric shift, the faint click of a zipper, and then his whisper, almost too quiet to catch. Don't answer it. Answer what? Because beneath the wind, beneath the rasp of his breathing, there was something else, something that sounded like a human voice trying to imitate a human voice. Not speaking words at first, just shaping syllables, testing the sound. Like a predator learning the call that opens the cage. And then, very softly, it said his name. Not once, not twice. It repeated it with the patience of something that had all the time in the world, and knew he didn't. The story you just heard is a fictional narrative created for entertainment. Some recordings are valuable because they document history. Others are valuable because they document warning. What you're about to hear is the story of an explorer who vanished after sending one final message to his team, an audio file so unsettling that hardened rescue workers refused to listen to it alone. The kind of sound that doesn't feel like information. It feels like a doorway. In this journey, we'll follow the trail from the last known camp to the place the locals mark with no names. Only a gesture, a finger drawn across the lips, a look toward the ground, and a firm refusal to guide anyone past a certain ridge. Because some landscapes don't just challenge your endurance, they challenge your sanity. And if you've ever wondered how fear truly begins, not the loud, cinematic kind, but the slow, creeping certainty that something is wrong, then stay with this story. You'll recognize the details, the mistakes made from exhaustion, the moments of false relief, the quiet decisions that seem harmless until they aren't. Before we step into the first chapter, take a second to support the channel. Subscribe so you don't miss the next expedition. Like this video if you enjoy intense survival mysteries, and comment below telling me what part of the world you're watching from. I read the comments, and I use them to choose the next locations we explore. Noki, let's press play on the last recording, because the most terrifying part isn't what the explorer saw. It's what heard him first. The recorder arrived in my hands the way bad news usually does. Quietly, without ceremony, wrapped in professional language that couldn't hide the tremor underneath. A courier case, 2 signatures, a chain of custody form, and a single note from the regional rescue coordinator. Do not play this alone. Call me after. I've been in this world long enough to know what that meant. Not superstition, not drama, liability, the kind of warning you issue when a sound has already done damage. The explorer who left it behind was named Miles Varga, field linguist, veteran of harsh terrain. The type of man who kept his fingernails clean even in the wilderness and never exaggerated a story. He joined a small research outfit, mapping old trade corridors through a mountain basin locals avoided. The plan was simple. Document caves, take samples, chart a route for future teams. Miles went ahead with a camera, a recorder, and a satellite messenger. Then he sent one final audio file. After that, nothing. The case smelled faintly of disinfectant and cold plastic. Inside was a rugged field recorder, scuffed, waterproof, meant to survive falls and storms. There was no blood on it, no obvious sign of struggle. That, almost more than anything, was the first wrong detail. Gear doesn't come back pristine from a disappearance. It comes back torn, dragged, soaked, or cracked, evidence that the world fought you for it. This came back like it had been placed. I waited until evening, until my team could be in the room with me. Not because I was afraid of ghosts, but because I'd learned the hard way that fear multiplies when you feel isolated. And this note was written by someone who'd already listened. Lena Park, medic and former mountain SAR, sat on the edge of a table, arms folded, eyes scanning the recorder like it might jump. Rafi Qureshi, our logistics engineer, had a laptop open and a small interface ready in case the file was corrupted. And Jonah Pike, my sound technician, did the one thing that made me trust him. He didn't talk much. He just set the speakers up properly, checked levels, and placed a hand near the volume knob like a man ready to yank you back from a cliff. When we pressed play, the first 10 minutes were normal field narration. Miles describing terrain, wind, gravel, a narrow ravine where sunlight never touched the floor. His voice was steady, clipped, someone conserving oxygen and attention. Then he paused. You could hear fabric shift and a faint intake of breath through a scarf, and then came footsteps. Not his, not the staggered crunch of a man climbing over rock. These were even, measured. Close enough that the stereo mics captured their symmetry. Step, 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 like someone walking on a wooden floor, but layered over the natural grit of stone. Miles whispered, "Don't answer it." Lena's eyes snapped to mine. "Answer what?" she mouthed, though the question felt foolish even as it formed, because under the wind, under the breath, there was something else, an irregular sound at first, like a throat clearing inside the canyon walls. A voice trying to make itself from pieces. And then, clear as day, something said very softly, "Miles." The speakers didn't distort. There was no glitch, no radio warble. It sounded like a person leaning close, speaking with confidence. Miles didn't respond, but his breathing changed. That's what made the hair rise on my arms, not the voice itself, the way his body reacted, the sudden, careful silence of a man who knows the rules and realizes they've just changed. The file ended 17 minutes later, not with a scream, but with a calm sentence that landed like a weight. "If you hear me call your name," Miles said, voice tight but controlled, "do not follow it." Then a single sharp sound, like a hand knocking on wood from inside stone, and nothing. Jonah stopped the playback. The room felt too small, like the walls had leaned in while we listened. Rafi swallowed. "That voice," he said, and his tone was careful, like he didn't want to offend reality. "It's too clean, too close, like it's in the mic." Lena exhaled through her nose. "Someone could have been behind him." "Then why didn't he record them?" Jonah asked, finally speaking. "Why didn't he turn around? Why would he say, 'Don't answer it'?" Because Miles Varga sounded like a man who'd already seen what happened to people who answered. I called the rescue coordinator right then. He picked up on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting. "You listened," he said. Not a question. "Yes." "Did you hear the knock?" "Yes." Silence, then a low voice. "We sent 2 search parties into that ravine. One came back, the other, we found their gear, neatly stacked, like someone cleaned up after them." That was the moment I decided this wasn't just a missing person case, it was a pattern, and patterns in the wild are either nature's warning or someone's. We flew out 2 days later. The basin sat between high ridges, a place where weather changed without permission. The locals in the nearest settlement didn't have maps on their walls. They had stories. They spoke of a listening place in the rock where your own voice returned to you, only slightly wrong. They said you could tell if you were safe by the animals, If birds refused to cross a certain point, you turned back. The elder who agreed to speak with us didn't ask for money. He asked for something stranger. Do not say your friend's name near the canyon, he told us through a translator. If the stones learn it, they will use it. Lena shifted her weight. That's a folk explanation, she muttered, but her eyes stayed sharp. Sometimes folk explanations are what people call survival rules, I said. We set base camp on a scrubby plateau above the ravine. The wind up there was constant, dry and cold. Below, the slot cut through the earth like a wound, narrow, shadowed, promising shelter and ambush in equal measure. We ran comms checks, set a rope system, staged medical supplies, and anchored bright marker tape where the light could actually reach it. Rafi installed a passive acoustic monitor, small microphones spaced along the lip of the ravine, connected to a recorder that would log anything unusual. If we can quantify it, he said, we can stop pretending it's magic. Jonah was quieter. He adjusted his own recorder like a priest preparing an altar. Sound plays tricks in narrow stone, he said. Echoes. Standing waves. It can feel like a voice is right behind you when it's 50 meters away. And names, Lena asked. Jonah hesitated. People hear what their brains are trained to find. That night, the wind dropped. Silence settled in a way that made the fire feel loud. The kind of silence where you notice the tiny noises, zipper teeth, a spoon scraping a pot, a boot shifting against dirt. I slept lightly, one ear tuned to the night like I always did in unfamiliar terrain. Somewhere after midnight I woke to a sound that didn't belong, a soft tapping, not on fabric, not on metal, on stone. 3 taps, evenly spaced, then a pause. I sat up slowly, heart hammering, breath controlled. Across the camp, Lena was already awake. I could see her silhouette, still as a statue. The tapping came again, 3 taps. Then, so faint I thought it might be the wind shaping itself, someone whispered my name, not shouted, not carried. Whispered, close and confident, as if someone had leaned into my tent. My mouth went dry. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I held my breath and listened for the follow-up sound of footsteps, for fabric, for the normal noises that prove a human being is out there. But the camp was still. Lena's voice came through the darkness, barely audible. "Don't talk," she said. And then, from Jonah's tent, the softest sound of all, a long exhale, like a man trying not to panic. The tapping stopped. A minute passed. 2. My pulse refused to slow. Then the sat phone on the table outside began to ring, except the sat phone doesn't ring. It beeps, it vibrates, it flashes. It does not produce a clean, old-fashioned ring like a landline in a quiet house. Rafi burst from his tent, eyes wide, staring at the device like it had grown teeth. "That's impossible," he whispered. The ring continued, steady and patient, as if whoever was calling had nowhere else to be. I forced myself to stand. Every instinct screamed not to go near it, but there are moments in the field when leadership is simply deciding whose fear gets priority. I approached slowly, lamp in hand, the light cutting a weak circle in the dark. The phone screen was lit, not with an incoming number, with a single word, Miles. My stomach tightened so hard it felt like I'd swallowed a stone. The ringing stopped the moment I reached for it. The screen went black. Behind me, Jonah's voice came out thin. "Tell me you saw that." "I saw it," I said. Lena stepped closer, hand near her knife, though a knife felt laughable against whatever could make a satellite device display a dead man's name. Rafi swallowed hard. "We should leave." "Not yet," I said, and I hated how steady my voice sounded, because steadiness can be denial in disguise. At dawn, we checked the plateau for tracks. There were none. No boot prints, no animal prints near camp, no disturbed dust around the phone. If someone had come close enough to whisper my name, they'd either floated or they knew exactly how to move without touching the ground. We reviewed Jonah's overnight audio. At the time stamp when the tapping started, The waveform showed something else, an ultra-low rumble, barely audible without headphones. It sat beneath everything like a distant engine, but there were no roads, no aircraft, no machinery, just rock and wind. Jonah leaned back, pale. "That's not a natural echo," he said. "That's a source." Raffi pointed to another detail. "Look at this." He enlarged the audio spectrum. Thin spikes appeared, regular, like a pattern. "It's structured." "Like speech?" Lena asked. Jonah didn't answer immediately. He adjusted the filter, boosted a narrow band, and played it back at a safe volume. At first it sounded like nothing. Then the hair on my arms rose again, because beneath the noise something was doing what Miles described, shaping syllables, not quite words, not yet. Testing, learning. I stared at the ravine, black in the morning shade, and understood something with a cold clarity. The final recording hadn't been a warning about a person. It had been a warning about a behavior, a thing that listened, remembered, and repeated what it needed to get you to step closer. Lena tightened the straps on her pack. "If we go down there," she said, "we set rules. No one goes alone. No one responds to anything that says their name. And if anyone hears something they can't explain, anything, they signal, and we climb out." Raffi nodded too quickly. Jonah's eyes stayed on the ravine like he could already hear it. I looked at each of them, then at the recorder in Jonah's hands. "We came here for Miles," I said, "and for the missing team. But we don't let curiosity make us stupid." The wind shifted, pushing cold air up from the slot like breath from a hidden mouth. We clipped into the rope line and began the descent. Halfway down, the light vanished. The temperature dropped. The smell changed. Wet stone, mineral, and something metallic that didn't belong in clean mountain air. My headlamp beam caught old scratches on the canyon wall, marks that could have been tools or claws or desperate hands. Then Jonah's radio crackled in my ear, not static, not interference. A clear, calm voice, Miles Varga's voice, said, "If you're hearing this, it means it learned you." And the channel went dead. The moment Jonah's radio went quiet, the ravine seemed to tighten around us, as if the stone itself had listened and approved. We hung on the rope line in a corridor so narrow, our shoulders nearly brushed both sides, headlamps carving thin, trembling tunnels through the dark. Above us, daylight was a pale ribbon. Below, the canyon turned into a throat. "Say it again," Lena demanded, voice low but sharp. "What did it say?" Jonah swallowed, eyes fixed on the radio like it might bite. "It was Miles," he said. "Same cadence, same breath." "Could be a recording," Raffi offered, clinging to reason the way you cling to rope. "A replay loop on an open frequency." I wanted to believe him, but the timing was too perfect, too personal. Miles's voice hadn't come through like a broadcast. It came through like a reply. We moved down another 20 meters until the ground widened into a shallow basin of rubble. The air there was colder, stiller, and it held sound the wrong way, like every whisper was being pressed flat and stored. I found myself speaking softer without deciding to. Everyone did. Lena signaled a halt. We anchored the rope, checked the walls for loose rock, and made a small staging area. Jonah pulled out his handheld recorder and started logging ambient sound. "That's our advantage," Jonah said, forcing calm. "We record everything. We compare. We don't guess." Raffi set down a portable sensor pack, temperature, humidity, magnetic field. "If there's interference," he muttered, "I'll catch it." I studied the canyon floor. There were footprints, old ones, half filled with dust. Boot tread patterns, a drag mark like someone had pulled a duffel, and then something that made my stomach clench, a neat line of stones, arranged edge to edge like breadcrumbs, guiding deeper into the slot. Lena crouched and touched one with a gloved finger. "Human," she said. "Someone made this." "Or something that watched humans do it," Jonah replied. We followed the stone line, keeping 2 meters between each person, rope clipped to anchors every few steps. The ravine bent left, then right, then narrowed again until we had to turn sideways to pass. The smell of wet metal thickened. My headlamp beam caught glints in the rock that looked like mica, but didn't sparkle like mica. It swallowed light, rather than reflecting it. Then we reached the first chamber. It wasn't a cave entrance in the usual sense. It was a seam in the stone, an unnatural slit just wide enough for a man to squeeze through. The air that drifted out of it was warmer than the ravine, and it carried a faint, sour odor like old breath trapped in cloth. Raffi leaned close, sensor pack humming. "Temperature jump of 4 degrees, he said. "No wind, no convection. That's weird." Lena looked at me. "This is where people disappear." I nodded once. "We go in together, tethered. Lights on. No talking unless necessary." Jonah clipped his recorder to his chest. "If sound is the weapon," he whispered, "we don't feed it." We squeezed through the seam single file. The rock scraped my pack. For a moment, my shoulders pinned, my breath caught, and I had the primal urge to back out, because tight spaces make you vulnerable, and vulnerability makes you loud inside your own head. On the other side, the chamber opened suddenly, wide enough to stand without touching walls. The ceiling rose into darkness. The floor was uneven stone, scattered with pale fragments that looked like broken shell. Jonah's light swept across the ground and froze. There were objects arranged in rows: a stove, a torn sleeping pad, a hard case for camera equipment, a coil of rope, 3 canteens, a neatly folded jacket. It looked like a store display, gear aligned with obsessive care. Lena stepped forward slowly. "This is Search Team 2, she said. Her voice wavered for the first time. "This is their staging kit." Raffi's eyes darted. "Where are the bodies?" No one answered because no one wanted to say the thought out loud. Whoever arranged the gear didn't want the people. It wanted the parts that told the story of being human. Jonah crouched and picked up the jacket with 2 fingers. He held it up to the light. The fabric was clean. Not washed clean, kept clean. Preserved. "Like a trophy," he murmured. My gaze moved to the back wall. Something had been scratched into the stone there, deep and frantic. A message, partially eroded by time or water. Lena traced it with her glove, reading aloud. "Don't—" She stopped, swallowed. "Don't listen." Beneath it, another line. "It learns." Raffi let out a shaky breath. "Okay," he said, voice rising despite himself. "Okay, that's enough. We have evidence. We document, and we leave." And that was when a new sound entered the chamber. Not a whisper, not a voice. A soft click. Like a tongue against teeth, we all froze. Jonah lifted his headlamp beam toward the far darkness. The click came again, a little closer, followed by a gentle inhale, too deep, too deliberate, the kind of breath a person takes before speaking. Lena's hand went to her radio, then stopped. She remembered the rule. I tried to control my breathing because panic makes oxygen loud. "Back!" I mouthed, and gestured with 2 fingers. We retreated toward the seam, careful not to scrape gear, careful not to make noise. The click followed. Then another sound, something like a shoe scuffing stone, but not quite. It was as if the chamber was testing movement. Jonah's recorder light blinked. He held up a finger 1 minute and shifted his audio levels. A voice, Miles again, came softly from the darkness behind the gear pile. "Don't go," it said. The words were perfect. Too perfect. Miles's tone, his tired authority, his subtle impatience, every detail was intact. My blood ran cold. Lena shook her head hard, eyes wide, a silent plea. "Don't answer." Raffi's lips parted, and I saw the reflex, the human instinct to respond when spoken to. I grabbed his sleeve and squeezed, warning him through pressure alone. The voice continued, warmer now, intimate. "It's safer here. The wind can't reach you." The strangest part wasn't that it spoke. It was that it sounded like it cared. Jonah's hands trembled. He pointed his headlamp deeper. The beam caught something that made my stomach twist, a shape in the far back, half hidden behind a jut of rock. Tall. Still. Not quite human in outline, but close enough that my brain wanted to label it as a person, just to survive the sight. Then it moved, not stepping forward, just shifting its weight. And when it shifted, the chamber's acoustics changed. The air seemed to thicken, as if sound itself had been trapped in syrup. The voice, Miles, spoke again, but the syllables stretched slightly wrong at the ends, like a recording played through a warped tape. "Tell me your name," it said. Lena's gaze snapped to mine. Her eyes were furious now, like she wanted to punch the universe. I pulled my team backward, inch by inch, toward the seam. The clicking sound increased, faster, almost excited. And then suddenly a new voice joined. Not Miles, my voice, perfectly mimicked down to the dryness in my throat. "Lena," it said, using my mouth to call her name. Lena flinched like she'd been struck. For a split second, her body reacted as if I'd spoken, her head turning toward me, her eyes searching my face. I didn't move my lips. I didn't breathe. It had taken less than 30 seconds to steal me. Jonah stumbled, boot-scraping stone, and the chamber responded with a sharp knock, like the one at the end of Miles' recording, only louder, resonant, coming from the walls themselves. The knock hit my chest like a bass drum. My teeth rattled. Raffi made a sound, half gasp, half sob, and that was enough. The tall shape in the darkness leaned forward into the edge of Jonah's light. It wasn't a man, but it had learned the shape of one. 2 arms, a head, shoulders. The surface of it looked wrong, too smooth in places, too textured in others, like something wearing a patchwork of materials it didn't understand. It didn't have eyes that reflected light the way eyes should. Its face, if it was a face, was a suggestion, a rough sketch made from shadow. And yet when it spoke again, it spoke with Miles' calm professionalism. "Stay," it said. "You're almost safe." Lena backed into the seam first, forcing herself through despite panic. I followed, shoving Raffi after her. Jonah went last, still recording, still staring, still trying to understand the thing, as if understanding could keep it from moving. The moment Jonah's shoulders cleared the slit, the chamber went silent. No click, no breath, nothing. We stumbled into the ravine, headlamps flickering in the sudden cold. The wind hit us like a slap, and it felt like waking from a nightmare you hadn't realized you were inside. "Move!" Lena hissed. "Now!" We climbed fast, rope burning our gloves, lungs aching, and all the way up I felt it behind us. Not footsteps, not pursuit, but attention, like a spotlight on the back of my neck. Halfway to daylight, Jonah's radio crackled. This time, it wasn't Miles. It was Lena's voice, flawless, terrified. "Help me," it said. "I'm stuck." Lena froze instantly, muscles locking. Her face went grey. Jonah looked at her, horrified. "That wasn't you," he whispered, but the voice, Lena, came again, closer now, urgent. "Please, I can't feel my legs." And then, from the darkness below, a softer sound rose. My own voice, gentle and reassuring. "It's okay," it said. "Just come back down." "I'll get you." Raffi's breathing turned ragged. "We have to," he began, eyes wild. "No," Lena snapped, and her authority cut through the panic like a blade. "It wants us to turn around." The voices continued, layering over each other like a choir of stolen identities. Jonah, Raffi, Miles, each one calling, pleading, insisting. Each one tailored to the person most likely to respond. I realized then what the elder meant about names. A name wasn't just a label. It was a handle. And we'd carried ours into the dark, like exposed skin. We reached the rim, just as the sun broke across the plateau, blinding and merciless. We scrambled onto open ground, panting, collapsing, laughing once in that hysterical way that means you're close to breaking. Jonah ripped off his headphones. "It's learning in real time," he said, voice shaking. "It's adapting to our reactions." Raffi wiped sweat from his brow with a trembling hand. "What is it?" he asked. "An animal? A person? A listener?" Lena said. A mimic. We should have packed up right then. We should have left that basin and never spoken about it again. But Jonah's recorder was still running, and he was staring at the waveform like a man reading a death sentence. There's something else, he murmured. What? I asked. He played back the last 30 seconds of audio from inside the ravine, after we'd climbed into daylight, after the voices had started. Under the mimicked pleas, beneath the layered names, there was a second track, almost too low to hear. A steady pattern, 3 taps, pause, 3 taps, like a code. Jonah's face tightened. It's not just calling us, he said. It's signaling. Raffi leaned closer. To who? Jonah didn't answer because in that moment the wind across the plateau shifted and carried a sound up from the ravine mouth. Faint, rhythmic, impossible to ignore. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 knocks. And from far beyond the ridge, somewhere deeper in the basin where no one should have been, something answered back, with the same pattern. 3 knocks. And then the sat phone lit up again on the table in camp, without ringing, without warning, displaying a new single word. Follow. The word on the sat phone sat there like a command carved into glass. Follow. No incoming number, no timestamp. Just that single instruction glowing against the black screen, bright enough to feel accusatory. Raffi stared at it as if reading it could make it harmless. Lena didn't even look. She scanned the ridgeline with the eyes of someone expecting movement. Jonah, meanwhile, was holding his recorder as if it were suddenly heavier. That answer from the ridge, he said, voice low. That wasn't an echo. I know, I replied. In the wilderness, you learn the difference between sound that belongs and sound that doesn't. Wind has a randomness. Rockfall has a messy violence. Animal calls have patterns, but they're tied to breath and biology. That knock pattern was neither random nor biological. It was communication. And if there was a second source answering from beyond the ridge, then whatever lived in that ravine wasn't alone. Lena made the call that mattered. We're pulling out. Raffi's relief was immediate, almost desperate. He started unhooking equipment with shaky hands. Jonah hesitated, eyes flicking to the ravine mouth, like he could still see the tall shape leaning forward in the dark. We have enough, Lena continued. Gear staging, the carving, the mimicry, the phone. We take this to authorities, to researchers, to whoever has the resources to deal with it. You think anyone will believe us? Raffi asked. Lena gave him a look. I don't care what they believe. I care that we're alive to tell it. We worked fast. Base camp was stripped down with the efficiency of people who didn't want to linger. Stakes pulled, ropes coiled, sensors packed. Jonah shut down the passive acoustic array and saved the files to 2 redundant drives. Every so often, someone would glance at the sat phone to see if it changed again. It didn't, not until we were almost ready to move. I lifted the phone, intending to power it fully off. My fingers were cold, clumsy. The screen flickered once, then displayed a new message, and I felt my stomach tighten. Miles is above you. Lena stiffened. That's bait. Jonah's eyes were fixed on the message. It knows what we want. Raffi whispered, What if it's true? It was a dangerous question because it held the exact emotional hook the thing needed. Hope, twisted into a leash. I forced myself to speak with authority. Miles is not above us, I said. Miles is not texting us. We don't respond. We don't pursue. The wind rose, sudden and sharp, snapping the loose edge of our tarp like a flag, and in that gust came a sound that made all of us freeze. A voice, Miles, carried from somewhere near the ridgeline, not from the ravine below, from up high, where the rock met sky. Help me, it called, faint but clear. Lena's face went hard. No. But Jonah had already turned his head, listening the way sound people do, triangulating without thinking. That's directionally correct, he said. It's coming from the north ridge. Raffi took a half step toward the slope before I caught him by the shoulder. Stop, I snapped. Rafi's eyes were wide and wet. What if he's alive? Lena approached him, close enough that he had to look at her. If you go chasing that voice, she said, and her tone was calm in the most terrifying way, you'll become another neat stack of equipment in a cave. Understand? Rafi nodded, but I saw the war inside him. Because the mind hates uncertainty, and it will accept danger if it promises closure. We began hiking out anyway, packs loaded, moving along the plateau toward our extraction point. The route took us across open ground for a kilometer, then down a scree slope into a narrow valley that would lead to the riverbed where the helicopter could land. The whole time, I felt watched. Not the paranoid kind of watched. The measured certainty of being observed by something patient, like an animal that has already decided your prey and is simply waiting for the moment you make the mistake. It happened 40 minutes into the hike. We reached a section where the trail narrowed between two outcrops of granite, creating a natural choke point. The wind died there. Our footfalls sounded too loud. Jonah was in the middle, Lena in front, Rafi behind me. That's when Rafi whispered, "Did you hear that?" I hadn't. But the moment he said it, my brain started searching for a sound to justify his fear. Jonah raised a hand, signaling silence. We stopped. And then, from behind us, back toward base camp, we heard it. A soft knock, 3 taps, a pause, 3 taps. The pattern rose from somewhere in the rocks, not loud, but perfectly distinct. The canyon had no reason to be speaking. Lena's jaw tightened. "Keep moving." But the knock came again, closer now, as if it were walking. Jonah turned slowly, lifting his headlamp even though it was daylight. Habit, instinct. In the shade of the outcrop, just for a moment, I saw something that didn't fit the landscape. A vertical shape. Still, tall. Too tall. Then it wasn't there. My breath caught. "Move!" I said, and my voice came out harsher than intended. We pushed through the choke point and into the open valley beyond. The riverbed gleamed in the distance, a silver ribbon. The helicopter would be there in 2 hours. All we had to do was keep moving, keep breathing, keep our minds from making bargains. Jonah walked faster, shoulders tense. "It's following at a distance," he said. "I can feel it." "You can't feel it," Rafi muttered. "You're imagining." Jonah shot him a look. "I can hear it," he corrected. "It's manipulating acoustics, using the terrain. It wants us to think it's everywhere." As if to prove him right, a voice drifted from the rocks to our left, my voice, clear and calm. "Jonah," it called. Jonah stopped so abruptly he nearly tripped. His head snapped toward the sound, eyes wide. He didn't answer, but his body did what bodies do when they hear their name. It oriented toward the source. Lena grabbed his packstrap and yanked him forward. "Eyes ahead," she barked. "Don't give it your attention." But the voice persisted, softer now, persuasive. "Jonah, please, it's cold down here." Rafi's face twisted. "That sounds like—" "Shut up," Lena hissed, because even acknowledging it gave it weight. We kept going, the valley widened, the riverbed grew nearer. For a few minutes the world felt almost normal again, sun on rock, thin clouds, the occasional cry of a distant bird. Then Jonah's radio crackled. This time, it wasn't a voice. It was our own last conversation, replayed back to us. "We're pulling out," Lena's voice said. Perfect, as if she was standing behind us. "You think anyone will believe us?" Rafi's voice followed. "We don't respond. We don't pursue," my voice concluded. The sequence played like a taunt. Then a new phrase inserted itself at the end, spoken in my voice, but with an unnatural softness. "Come back." Lena ripped her radio off her shoulder and switched it off completely. "No comms," she ordered. "No open channels." "Then how do we coordinate if something happens?" Rafi demanded. "By staying close and keeping eyes on each other," she shot back, "like humans have done for 100,000 years." We descended into the riverbed around mid-afternoon. The air there was warmer, and the stones underfoot were rounded and slick. Water murmured over rocks, a sound that should have been comforting, but water makes echoes too. Jonah slowed, scanning the banks. "The helicopter can't land if the wind shifts," he warned. "We might have to wait." "We wait," Lena said. We found a flat area and set down packs. Jonah placed his recorder on a rock and began capturing the ambient sound again, as if evidence could build a fence. Raffi paced. "This is insane," he muttered. "It's a prank. It has to be. Someone is messing with us." No one answered him, because deep down we all knew pranks require people. And we'd seen no tracks, no human signs beyond those neatly staged objects in the cave. No drones, no hidden speakers, no footprints. Just rock and wind and a thing that stole voices like clothing. The sun began to sink behind the ridges, pushing long shadows into the riverbed. We were still 2 hours from scheduled extraction. Then the river changed its sound. At first it was subtle, like a shift in flow. Then it became obvious. The water's murmur started to align with a rhythm. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. The hair rose on my arms as I realized it wasn't the water changing. It was my brain being guided, trained to hear the pattern everywhere. Jonah's face was pale. He pointed at his recorder. "It's in the frequencies," he whispered. "It's embedding itself in ambient noise." Lena's eyes narrowed. "Like a parasite." Raffi stopped pacing. "What do we do?" "We don't give it names," Lena said. "We don't answer it, and we don't split." That was when we heard footsteps on the gravel upstream. Real footsteps, heavy, human rhythm. We all turned, instinct overriding rules. A figure appeared around a bend in the riverbed, limping toward us. He wore a torn jacket, face smeared with dirt. His beard was longer than it should have been. His eyes were sunken. For a full second, my heart leapt in my chest like an animal trying to escape, because it looked like Miles Varga. He raised a hand weakly. "Please," he croaked, voice raw. I didn't know where else to go. Raffi made a broken sound and stepped forward. "Miles!" Lena blocked him with her arm like a gate. "Stop!" she said, voice deadly quiet. The figure kept walking, slow and painful. "I'm real," he pleaded. "I'm here. Look at me." Jonah's mouth hung open. His hands trembled so badly his recorder nearly fell. "That's him," Jonah whispered. "That's—" I forced my eyes to focus on details. The gait, the clothing, the skin, the way his shadow fell. And that's when I saw it. The shadow didn't match the body. The figure's outline was human, but the shadow stretched wrong, too tall, too thin, with shoulders that rose like spikes. It wavered as if it didn't understand how to copy light. Lena saw it too. Her face tightened, and she raised her flare gun in a smooth motion that meant she'd already made peace with what she was about to do. "Don't come closer," she said. Miles, if it was Miles, stopped. His expression shifted, and for a moment his face looked blank, like a mask waiting for instructions. Then he smiled. Not a warm smile, not a relieved smile, a smile that arrived a fraction of a second late, as if the muscles had to be remembered. "Lena," it said in my voice, gentle and coaxing, "put the flare down." My blood turned to ice, because it wasn't just mimicking voices now, it was choosing the voice that would be hardest to resist. Lena's grip tightened. "You're not him," she spat. The figure's head tilted slightly, like a curious animal. "Then what am I?" it asked, in Miles's voice again, calm and professional. Jonah, without thinking, whispered, "A mimic." The figure's smile widened. "Yes," it said, "and I'm learning." It took another step toward us. Lena fired the flare. The red-hot projectile screamed through the air and struck the figure in the chest. For a heartbeat, it seemed to burn like flesh would burn. The jacket caught fire, the light blooming bright and violent. Then the flames did something impossible. They sank inward, like the fire was being swallowed. The figure didn't scream, it didn't stumble. It just watched the flare's light disappear into itself as if consuming it. And as the last of the flare's glow vanished, the figure's face went dark, truly dark, like a hole. Then from inside that darkness, a chorus of voices poured out, layered and overlapping. Miles, Lena, Jonah, Raffi, my own. Dozens of phrases, some begging, some laughing, some whispering names. The sound hit us like a wave and made my knees buckle. My brain tried to find meaning in it, tried to answer, tried to pick a voice to follow. Lena shouted, actual words, breaking the rule. "Back! Look at me!" Her command snapped me out of the spiral. I grabbed Raffi's packstrap and yanked him backward. Jonah stumbled, eyes squeezed shut, hands over his ears. The figure surged forward, not running, but closing distance with a smoothness that ignored the gravel. And behind it, around the bend upstream, more shapes began to appear. Tall silhouettes moving in the shadow, answering the first one's call. 3 knocks echoed off the canyon walls, perfectly timed, like a signal flare made of sound. We ran. Not toward the helicopter, too far. We ran toward the only shelter in sight, a narrow cleft in the riverbank rock, a crack just big enough to squeeze into. Another seam, another throat. As we shoved ourselves into it, the chorus of voices swelled behind us, filling the riverbed, filling the air, filling our heads. And right before the rock closed around me, I heard one final sentence, spoken in Miles's calm voice, directly into my ear. "You shouldn't have played the recording." The cleft in the riverbank rock swallowed us like a closing fist. For a few seconds, all I could feel was stone scraping my pack, my shoulders pinning, my breath compressing into a tight, hot thing trapped behind my teeth. I fought the urge to thrash, because thrashing wastes oxygen, and oxygen is everything when the world decides to squeeze you. Ahead of me, Lena wriggled deeper, her boots kicking against rock. Behind me, Raffi was jammed so close I could feel his panic vibrating through the stone. Jonah's recorder thumped against his chest in the tightness, still running, still collecting the sounds that might end up being our last proof. Then the cleft opened into a cramped pocket, barely a chamber, more like a widened fracture. We tumbled in and pressed ourselves against the back wall, headlamps throwing harsh light across jagged rock. Outside, the riverbed was alive with sound, not just footsteps, voices, a layered mass of them, shifting and overlapping like a crowd in a stadium. But there were no people, no shouts bouncing off distant slopes. These voices were too close, too intimate, like they were being spoken directly into the entrance of our hiding place. I clamped a hand over my mouth, trying to silence my own breathing. Lena held up 2 fingers, quiet, then pointed at each of us in turn, forcing eye contact, demanding control. She was the only one among us who looked like she still belonged to herself. The chorus outside softened, then sharpened again, cycling through tones as if searching for the frequency that would crack us open. "Help me. Please, come back. It's cold. I'm stuck." My name rose out of the mix twice, spoken in my mother's voice, impossible, absurd, a weapon aimed at the oldest part of the brain. I felt my throat tighten, grief and fear tangling so fast I couldn't separate them. Raffi trembled, eyes squeezed shut. Jonah's lips moved silently, like he was praying or counting. The sound was doing what it was designed to do, collapsing logic, widening emotion, making the simplest action, go toward the voice, feel like relief. Lena leaned close to my ear. "We hold," she whispered. "We don't respond. We wait for the helicopter." I wanted to remind her the helicopter might never come. The comms were off. We were trapped in a rock crack while something intelligent circled outside. But I didn't speak, because speaking would add new syllables to its collection. A soft click came from the entrance, then another, the same tongue-against-teeth sound we'd heard in the chamber. Something was very close. We killed our headlamps simultaneously, plunging the pocket into darkness. The instant the light died, the voices outside shifted, annoyed or curious. The chorus stopped pleading and started listening, and in that listening, the river's murmur re-emerged. Water, rock, wind, ordinary sounds trying to reclaim the air. Then came 3 knocks, loud and resonant, right at the cleft entrance. Pause. 3 knocks again. The stone around us vibrated faintly, the rhythm traveling through the fracture like a pulse. Raffi made a tiny whimper before he could stop it. Immediately, a voice peeled away from the chorus, Raffi's own voice, perfect and trembling. "I'm here," it said. "I'm here." Raffi's eyes snapped open in horror. He clamped a hand over his mouth, shaking his head like he could erase what he'd just offered. Lena's hand gripped his wrist hard, grounding him. Her other hand held the flare gun, useless now in this tight space. The voice, Raffi, continued, coaxing and sweet. "Come on. Just come out. It's okay." Jonah's body jerked as if struck. The sound was weaponized familiarity, the mind's trust turned into a lever. I forced myself to focus on physical details, the grit under my gloves, the cold sweat on my neck, the steady cadence of Lena's breathing. If I could anchor in sensation, maybe I could keep my mind from falling into the voice. Outside, footsteps moved in the gravel, slow, deliberate, not rushing, they had time. Then the sat phone in my pack vibrated once, a single pulse. My stomach dropped. The phone was off. Or should have been. I eased my pack forward, hands shaking, and slid the device out without letting it scrape rock. The screen lit up weakly, casting a pale blue glow. Open the crack. Lena's eyes flashed to it. She shook her head violently. The message changed. "We can keep you safe." Then another line appeared beneath it. "Just give us your names." My mouth went dry. That was the core of it. Not flesh, not gear, not even our bodies. Names, handles, keys. Lena leaned close again, lips barely moving. "It wants control," she breathed. "Names give it access." Raffi's eyes darted around the blackness. "How does it even—" He stopped himself mid-sentence. Jonah's fingers brushed my sleeve. He pressed something into my palm, one of his earbuds, a gesture that said more than words. Listen carefully, not to them, to what's underneath. I slipped the earbud in one ear, keeping the other open for Lena's signals. Jonah held his recorder close and tapped the screen to show he was feeding me the raw sound. At first I heard only the chorus outside, softened by rock. Then Jonah adjusted a filter, barely, and something else emerged beneath it. A low-frequency vibration, steady as a heartbeat, but not a single heartbeat. Many. And within that vibration, a structure like a carrier wave, the kind used to transmit information. The voices were riding it like passengers on a train. The knocks were the train's whistle. I looked at Jonah in the dark. He nodded once, grim. "It's broadcasting," he mouthed. "Not a creature calling randomly. A system. A network." The thought made my blood run colder than the cave air. Because if it was a network, then leaving the basin might not be enough. If it could tag you with your name, it could carry you, your voice, your identity, beyond these ridges. Outside, the chorus shifted again. Now it wasn't pleading. It was bargaining. "We'll stop. We'll let you go. Just tell us. Say it once. Just once." Raffi began to rock subtly, the movement of a mind slipping toward collapse. I pressed my hand against his shoulder, firm, trying to hold him in reality. Lena's grip tightened on his wrist, her jaw clenched. A new sound entered, very faint, far above. A helicopter. At first I thought I imagined it. Wishful hallucination. But the sound grew steadier. The thump, 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 slicing through the air, distinct from the ravine's acoustics. Lena's eyes widened, hope flared, dangerous but necessary. We couldn't turn the radios on, but we could signal. Lena pulled a chemical light stick from her pocket, one of the bright green ones. She cracked it silently, the glow blooming like a small alien heart in the dark. Then she looked at me and pointed upward, then to the cleft entrance. A plan formed without words. Get the light outside, let the helicopter see it, guide rescue to us. But the moment the glow intensified, the voices outside changed tone sharply, like predators noticing movement. "Lena," my voice called, soft and soothing. "Don't." Lena's face twisted in fury. She shoved the light stick toward the entrance anyway, inching it along the stone like a worm. A hand appeared in the crack, not human, not fully, too long, fingers too smooth. The skin, if it was skin, looked like wet stone. It reached with careful precision and pinched the light stick between two fingers. For a heartbeat, it just held it, studying the glow. Then it pulled the light back out of the cleft. The chorus outside rose in volume, excited. The helicopter's thump continued overhead, closer now, but beginning to drift as if the pilot couldn't find a landing. Lena's eyes went wide with pure rage. She jerked the flare gun up, aimed at the crack. I grabbed her forearm. A flare fired inside this fracture could cook us alive. She stared at me, breathing hard, and I shook my head once. No. We needed another signal. Jonah, shaking, lifted his recorder and pointed at the screen. He'd been monitoring levels. He mouthed, "It doesn't like certain frequencies." He showed me a spike on the spectrum, high and narrow, something that made the background noise distort whenever it occurred. Jonah reached into his pouch and produced a tiny emergency whistle, one of those high-pitched ones climbers use. He held it between trembling fingers like it was a last match in a storm. Lena's eyes locked on it. Jonah didn't blow it immediately. He waited, listening for the helicopter's pass overhead. When the thump was closest, he raised the whistle to his lips, and then he blew. The sound was piercing, so sharp it felt like it cut the inside of my skull. It echoed through the fracture, through the rock, out into the riverbed. It was painful, but it was pure. Outside, the chorus of voices faltered. For the first time they sounded disturbed. A long, strained noise rose from beyond the crack, like something trying to inhale through a throat too narrow. The knocks stopped. The carrier vibration wavered. Jonah blew again, longer this time. The response was immediate, a violent scraping at the entrance, rock grinding against rock. The cleft shook as if something heavy had thrown itself against it. Pebbles rained down. Raffi screamed one sharp, involuntary sound, and then clamped his mouth shut in terror. The chorus returned, but now it wasn't pleading. It was angry. "Stop! Stop that! Stop!" The words came in multiple voices at once, overlapping like a malfunctioning speaker system. My ears rang. Jonah's face was contorted with pain, but he blew again anyway, forcing the frequency into the air like a blade. The helicopter sound shifted abruptly, circling tighter now. Then, through the crack, a new sound punched in, a real human radio transmission, faint but unmistakable. "This is Rescue 2-7, a voice crackled. "We have audio contact. Repeat, we have audio contact. Pop a visual if you can." Lena's eyes flashed. She pointed at Jonah's whistle, then at her last flare tucked in her pack, one she'd saved for absolute emergency. I reached in, pulled it out, and held it up. In this cramped fracture, firing a flare was suicidal, unless we used it differently. Lena gestured sharply. "Throw it out! Don't fire inside!" I nodded. I crawled to the crack entrance, heart hammering, and slid the flare casing forward until it was just outside in the riverbed. Then I yanked the ignition. The flare roared to life with a violent hiss, spraying brilliant red light against the rock walls. Heat flooded in. The crack lit up like a wound. Outside, the chorus screamed, not in fear, but in furious distortion. The voices warped, stretching into something inhuman. The tall shapes moved. I couldn't see them clearly, but I felt them, like pressure shifting around the entrance. The flare's light seemed to push them back, forcing distance. The helicopter's thump grew louder, aligned above us. "Visual!" The rescuer's radio voice shouted, "We have visual! Hold position!" Lena exhaled a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Raffi's body sagged, trembling with relief that didn't feel real yet. Jonah leaned back against stone, eyes squeezed shut, still holding the whistle like a talisman. But the flare's light was fading fast, and with it, the chorus began to reorganize. The knocks resumed, 3, pause, 3, more frantic now, as if signaling urgency to whatever was upstream. Then came a new sound, one that made my stomach turn with dread. Footsteps, many sets, running, not toward us from the river bend. From above, down the slopes toward the riverbed, fast and chaotic, like a crowd responding to a siren. Human footsteps, and over them, a single voice rose, clear and commanding, in the tone of a rescue officer. "Come out now! We're here to help!" Lena's face drained of color, because the helicopter was still overhead. Real rescue was in the sky, so whoever was shouting from the slopes was not rescue at all. Jonah's recorder screen flashed a warning, audio levels spiking into red, the waveform turning into a solid block. The mimic had learned the ultimate bait: authority, safety, a uniform you could hear but not see. The footsteps drew closer, gravel sliding, breath and grunts of men descending fast. Raffi's eyes went wide. "They're coming," he whispered, barely audible. "They found us." Lena grabbed his face in both hands, forcing his gaze. "Listen to me," she hissed. "If you walk out there, you won't die fast." Outside, the commanding voice repeated, louder now, perfectly spaced like a practiced call. "Come out now. It's safe." The flare died with a final hiss, plunging us back into darkness. And in that darkness, right at the crack entrance, something leaned close and whispered my name, softly, lovingly, like a friend about to take your hand. I clenched my teeth until my jaw ached. Above us, the helicopter hovered, blades chopping the air. Below us, the footsteps and voices closed in, and the rock around the cleft began to vibrate again with that low-frequency carrier wave, stronger than ever. Jonah raised the whistle, hands shaking, and mouthed a final warning as he prepared to blow again. "If this doesn't work, it's going to learn how to scream."